Hey, Barefoot, a lot of people are asking how to be happier. What do you think about that?
Yeah, wow, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If we could just give that answer in a quick single sentence or perhaps a pill you could take, um, wouldn't that be worth lots of money? And haven't a lot of people made a lot of money proposing that they have such a thing? But I think the problem is actually deeper than that. And in order to really get at happiness, we have to do some work to uncover what happiness is for each of us. The problem with the topic is, and with all of us these days, is we want, a simple answer to a complex problem. The idea of happiness, if you look at the world we're living in today and the world we've evolved to live in, there's such a difference there. There's such a degree of complexity that there's no really truly simple answer unless we begin to look at what happiness itself is. One thing I can tell you about a discussion around happiness is that it can't be had in a short 15-minute video. And that one of the reasons that such videos or even lists of things to do, which we will get to in our own time, the reason these things don't work is because most people don't feel that a simple answer will work in the first place. They intuitively know that their answer is going to be something complicated, or they feel it should be, because their problem feels complicated. So each of us know intuitively that we don't want a simple answer to our particular and very special complex problem. Instead, we want something magical. Well, so that means that most people won't do small things because what small thing is going to fix your big problem? So now we've eliminated small things. And on the other side of that, most people won't do big things because let's be honest, it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of energy, discipline, structure and motivation. And maybe we just don't have that. I mean, would you be here if you were full of motivation and ready to jump into action? And so on big things, especially. So it turns out that most people are not going to do big things either. So what is the answer? Well, it actually turns out that the answer is indeed in small things, but in not expecting any one small thing to solve a complex problem. It's actually a complex of small things. That is to say, all the small things that you do added together to have a compounding effect. We will indeed be talking about what appear to be small things. We need to talk about those things in a way that we understand that small things can have very big impacts.
So, what type of things would you think would have a really big effect for people when it comes to being happier?
Well, this is where we get into the list, the list of check boxes that anybody could look up online and they could find a list of things to do. And then they could go through that list expecting that at the end of checking off all those boxes, they'll be happy. The problem is that that won't work either. So we do have a list of things that have worked for others, that have worked through history, that science shows us works, and that my own practical experience working with patients shows me work. Um, but all of those things, when they're mentioned to you, you will notice your tendency to nod your head knowingly in agreement with each one of them. And then we'll move on to the next thing on the list, and you'll do the same thing there. And yet, you'll not feel impacted as if any one of those things is really going to make a difference for you. I have a list right here. What we'll do instead is we're going to use that list of things to actually do a series of videos about happiness. But with each video, what we're going to do is talk about the basic content, the basic idea, the thing that you might see as a bullet point or a checkbox on your list. But then we're going to talk about why that works. And then we'll follow that with some type of an experience or some type of exercise that you'll feel a direct impact, and in some cases, immediately. After that, we'll follow that with some sort of techniques for integrating or a video for integrating, or our conversation will then lead to integrating what we learned from the experience back into the content, the thing that we learned. This way, we bring what we're learning on the page, on the list, alive and into our life. So it's not enough to read down through a list. Everybody can do that. What we need to do instead is, as we discuss these things, we need to understand why they work, and then we need to give it a try. We need to give it a try. And then after we give it a try, we need to reflect on what we learned from the effort and incorporate it into ourselves.
Mm, right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, in the next video, what would be the first thing that we're going to be talking about on that list that we should be trying?
Well, an example of items on the list would be self-awareness, or practicing gratitude, strengthening relationships, physical movement, lots of ways in which we reconnect with ourselves, reflecting upon your values so you understand who you are. And you see, again, as I go down this list, giving back and being involved in the community, these are all things that we would nod our head to. Everybody will nod their head because they've heard this before, and to some degree they can understand how it will work. But until you take each one of these, and that will be our intention, is to go through and take each one of these ideas and a few others, and we'll talk about why they work. And then we'll actually talk about an action step, what you can do. We'll do an experience around it so you can feel, we can demonstrate the effect of the techniques we're using. And those techniques, if applied regularly, then we get into the doing part. It's
Mm,
one thing to know, it's another to do. So if you're wanting to um, learn something that creates change in your life, it sort of consists of two things. And this I learned when I was teaching martial arts for 20 years. That there are two things that I need to do with you. The first thing I need to do with you is impart some type of new information, some new knowledge. You need to gain some new understanding, some new information. The second thing I need to do is allow you to practice that information while giving you feedback. The first thing we call teaching, the second thing we call training. Training is repetition that develops habit. Teaching is the acquisition of new knowledge. So we want to first acquire new knowledge, and then we want to practice it and get feedback on that practice. All right. So now, one thing to understand is I'm going to teach you a lot about how the brain works, how the nervous system works, and along the way, you're not going to have to remember any of those things because the important things will keep coming up. I'm pretty consistent in the way I approach things. And your questions, the questions that you need the answers to, those will bring up the repetition that tends to self regulate or self tune the conversation down to what you actually need to get from it. For everything that we are going to do in the coming videos, we will use a level of awareness, probably a level of awareness that most people are not used to. So our next video, and which will be the first video in a series on happiness, will be about how to develop awareness, why it's important to develop awareness. Join us on the next video where we will start immediately with developing awareness.